You're listening to the Pithy Chronicle. History with a bite. I'm Caroline.
And I'm Erica. And we bring you history's dirtiest deeds, dripping with sarcasm.
Are you hungry yet?
Welcome back, Pithy listeners. Before we get started today, I would love to shout out the fact that we are trending in Finland.
And I don't know a single Finnish person. I've been to Finland 3 times, but I don't know a Finnish person. So it's exciting they found us.
Hey, we're getting out. Thank you for reviewing and subscribing. If you want to buy us a coffee, you can through buyusacoffee.com/Pithy Chronicle. And if you wanted to do something with more treats and more small bites, you can join us on Patreon for a monthly subscription. And without further ado,
let's talk mistresses.
Let's talk boobs.
Hot girl summer.
We are ready to dive in to one of the very first maîtresses en titre ever in French history. The French do have a very long history of unofficial mistresses, and those unofficial mistresses did still have a lot of political sway. However, Agnes Sorel was the first one to be offered an official title.
The first of many.
Yes, the first of many.
What a proud heritage she leaves behind.
Honestly, though,
It's sometimes the mistress was the only smart one in the bunch.
I mean, the impact this woman had on art history.
Cool.
I was dumbfounded.
I'm excited.
Agnes was born in 1422 of a family of the lesser, or like the country nobility, at Fromentu in Touraine. She had a very good education in Anjou as a damsel in waiting, or a lady in waiting, to Isabel of Lorraine, wife of King René. Agnes Sorel had very much an otherworldly beauty which preceded her. I mean, everyone knew about her. As historian Joseph Delort wrote in 1824, quote, "The reputation of her striking beauty soon crossed the limits of Touraine and drew near it an infinity of magnificent lords," unquote.
Boom.
But when you are this otherworldly beauty whose beauty is known far and wide, you're not going to settle down with just some nobody, right?
No, I think you would hold out for the tippity top.
I don't know if that was really her plan, but she definitely caught the eye of King Charles VII of France.
Okay, otherworldly beauty. That could mean so many things. Do we
many.
have any more details than just it was different and special?
Yeah, we have more information. It is not very detailed. So she had pale blue eyes and extremely white skin and the most beautiful face that anyone had ever seen. She tweezed her hairline back in accordance with the Italian style.
Classic.
So I personally don't like the 5-head look, but you know, some people do.
It's quite a look. I have in the past talked about that as one of the beauty standards that I'm happy is no longer with us.
Yeah.
But I applaud her dedication to plucking out every hair.
Would it not have been just faster to shave?
Maybe they did. Maybe the plucking is just an exaggeration to make us feel sorry for them.
I don't know, man. They never say shave.
They always say pluck.
It is always pluck.
No, thank you.
Of course, as beautiful as this white-haired, blue-eyed gal is, very Targaryen, she could not
Very
get away.
Targaryen, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Yes.
She couldn't get away from Charles VII. He is 18 years her elder, which would not be so bad if she was a little bit older, but once they kind of get into a relationship, she is 20.
That is...
Which I guess is
really
older than we normally see, but still almost double her age.
That's not just acceptable. From her point of view, that's a win.
Yeah.
38. It's not bad.
That's not bad. That's not bad at all. So she made her royal suitor wait for some time, but it only really increased his attraction. Distance makes the heart grow fonder. You're playing hard to get, therefore I'm going to pursue you even more. And I think she kind of realized that he's not going to stop. He wants me, and I should probably just give in. Maybe it's a one-time thing and he'll be done with me. But oh no.
But she wasn't married, so she knew that when she took this step, that was the end to not always being a mistress.
Yeah.
The 15th century is still pretty medieval.
And you know what? She did not ever marry. ever.
She truly was a working girl. This was her bread and butter, literally.
I mean, she was an art model.
That's true, but I don't think that paid very well back then.
Yeah, I don't know that she was paid for it.
I had friends that used to do it in college.
I have never had anyone draw me, thank you. I've had a lot of very romantic things done. That was not one of them. I don't feel like I missed out.
Especially if it's a realistic painting class, you're like, okay, that was rude. You didn't need to highlight that.
Yeah, now, if my face wants to inspire a great work of art, fine.
You've heard it here. Send it on to Erica.
But definitely, like, neck down, we don't need to talk about.
Holy cow.
So, a little bit of insight into the, dare I say, the harem of mistresses that are going on right now with Charles VII.
Oh, Charles.
Yeah.
Oh, so Charles.
Politician and essayist Francois Frederic Steenackers wrote that Charles VII had a crowd of anonymous mistresses, or a sort of harem, a traveling deer park, that's his word, not mine, who followed him everywhere.
Are they referring to them as deer because they're sacrificial?
Deers really weren't much for the sacrifice. That was lambs.
That's right.
So, no, I think it was just a pretty demeaning way for him to describe that he had a lot of honeys.
You know what? Francois Frederic Steenacker. That's rude. These were still women. Just because a king told them they had to sleep with him. And let's be real. If a king says, hey, I want you, that really means, hey, I want you, and if you refuse, bad things will happen.
To you and your family, probably.
Yes, it's an important distinction.
Well, another important distinction to make is Sorel was not a part of this harem or deer park or anything like that. She
was otherworldly.
Yeah, not only was she stunning, but she was incredibly intelligent and kind, because remember, she had a great education while she was in the care of the Duchess of Lorraine. Back to Steenacker's quote, she had all at once, by a rare privilege, a superior beauty of the body and the soul, with this physical and moral vitality that satisfied all the demands of love, unquote. And good for her. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I could satisfy all demands of love. I feel like that's a very tall order.
And to do so with a moral vitality as a mistress is frankly an achievement in itself.
Right, because he definitely was married at this point.
And they definitely weren't.
Yeah, but apparently his wife, Marie, had really no issue with Sorel. Now, I don't know why that is, but there's not any evidence.
Royal marriages come in all shapes and sizes.
Well, this one seemed to be a very amicable, yes, please have your mistresses and your deer park. Agnes, again, not just another conquest, she was a true, real deal love for him. And in order to keep her close, the king placed her in the services of Queen Marie of Anjou as a bridesmaid, which again is kind of like a lady in waiting. It is not at her wedding. She did not hold the flowers.
That would be awkward.
It would be so awkward.
She held the king's wife's flowers. Camilla
didn't do that, but she did wear white to the royal wedding.
Girl did everything else.
Anyway. This was a first step for Agnes. She gave the king 3 daughters who were officially recognized as his kids.
Whoa. That's pretty big for this time.
Yeah, and they're daughters, too.
Yeah.
If it was a son and there was a succession issue, you could see a little bit more. These were daughters.
They were probably otherworldly beautiful as well, so.
Exactly. You can't understate the political power of a marriage.
Of beauty.
A beauty, especially when you're dealing with maybe...
They were bargaining chips.
Yeah, they were bargaining chips. You know, you can't marry your legitimate daughter to another illegitimate kid, but you can marry your illegitimate...
Definitely.
You've got to make it fit.
The puzzle pieces have to fit together.
So from 1444, she became the first official favorite of the King of France, the maîtresse en titre. And though she was allowed in court, her presence was not always welcome, because this was different. This was the first time it was official, and she had political power and an official reason to be there. Yeah. Agnes was at the heart of many scandals, most of them relating to her fashion choices.
Oh dear.
Yeah, she was known for her otherworldly beauty and her ample bosom.
Oh my goodness, she has it all.
I mean, truly, because if you look at the paintings, boy howdy, after 3 kids...
She has a bosom.
Those things stand up straight.
That's not fair.
It's not fair. And so she And I gotta commend her for this, but if you've got it, flaunt it approach to all of her assets.
She is an official mistress. There's no husband to offend. The wife says she's cool with it. What else are you gonna do?
I don't know, man.
You gotta keep the king interested.
Yeah.
Remind him.
This is what you got going.
This is why you're here.
Not only did she accentuate her décolletage with an uncut diamond necklace, Agnes also made a habit of keeping her bodice unlaced so that her breasts were exposed.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's
Totally exposed.
Not if you've got it, flaunt it. That's just look at my boobs.
I mean, it's if you got it, flaunt it to the umph degree.
It's like people that walk around in those mesh bathing suits that are like crocheted. Yeah. Things poke out. They find the little holes. Ladies, what are you doing?
How are you enjoying yourself?
I would be self-conscious the whole time, but we are from prudish America. What do we know?
Puritanical Americans is what I have been called many a time.
I can see that for you.
I'm a lady, dagummit.
Well, Agnes wasn't. Oh my god.
Do you want to know what is crazy about all of this and kind of does prove that we're puritanical Americans?
Sure.
The French aristocrats were like, meh, boobs, whatever. They were more distressed by her jewelry choice than they were the sight of her ample bosom.
Was she wearing nipple jewelry? How could that be more disturbing?
I mean, yes, she was.
Was it a wardrobe malfunction moment to age myself?
No, it was not a Janet Jackson situation. They were more upset by the jewelry because 2 centuries earlier, King Louis IX had passed an act that prohibited the wearing of diamonds by anyone but the king. Because,
because why not?
Why not?
Oh my god. No one can enjoy this sparkly mineral except
me. Agnes stunned the court when she sauntered in with the forbidden jewels prominently displayed on more than likely her exposed boobs. While courtiers gossiped about the indiscretion of the jewelry, not the boobs, Agnes's proximity to the monarch meant that she really didn't have to fear retribution. It had even been rumored that she was gifted the world's first ever cut diamond.
I thought diamonds at this point were cut to put in a crown or something.
A lot of times those were still a bezel cut or a cabochon.
These are fun words. What's a cabochon?
Polished, but it's not cut. And while they might be cut in a way to get them in the crown, it wasn't cut like a Tiffany cut.
So is he still enjoying a harem of deer in the background as well?
I think that has lessened. I don't think that he's stopped, but it is very clear that Agnes is the main squeeze.
Well, if she's getting diamonds.
Now,
honestly, if that was true, if he gave her this first uncut diamond, he was branding her. Yeah. Having her wear the thing that only he can wear is like claiming her as his in a very visual way.
Very distinct.
I mean, I've heard of worse ways
if the open
to claim
bodice
a woman as your
was
own,
not enough.
But, I'll take a diamond over a brand. Thank you so much.
Yeah, or a tattoo. Please, no thank you. Again, they really want to beat home this idea, wink wink, that Agnes is more beautiful than anyone else in France, in Europe even. And so, as such, we have to put that in art so we can see her forever and always.
Again, if you're going to mark her with a diamond, why would you not also have her portrait made?
Yeah, painter Jean Fouquet crystallized the image we most associate with Agnes today. The single breast-bearing virgin in his Virgin and Child with Angels is widely believed to be modeled on Agnes. According to Renier and Rosemarie Hagen, authors of What Great Paintings Say, Sorel was the obvious choice for the Virgin. Although I'm not sure where they get that, but okay.
Otherworldly beauty.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what they go on to say, because she was the world's most beautiful woman.
And she wasn't just a beautiful woman. Art throughout the ages, but specifically at this time, really went with these tropes of dark and swarthy as being very dangerous, and blonde, blue-eyed, and pale as being just virginally pure.
Sure.
And so it doesn't matter what her actions were. Her visual was that of a woman straight from heaven. I mean, Jesus is blonde at this point. They're not playing around with.
There is no historical accuracy with ethnicity.
She was a visual of what they thought Mary, for some reason living in Jerusalem, would have looked like. La-di-da-di-da.
As the breastfeeding Madonna, Sorel was able to embody the prevailing idea of beauty, and women wanted to be as beautiful as Mary, even though Mary was not blonde.
And probably didn't leave her breast exposed. But hey, I don't want to, put that on to Mary. You do you,
You
boo.
do you, Mary. You breastfeed in public if you need to.
Fed is best.
Fed is best. Because before I came into this, I popped a bottle of formula in my baby's mouth.
There you go. Do you find it interesting that she is the epitome of motherhood? And she was a mother, so that's not true. Never mind, I take that back. She was absolutely a mother. She just wasn't a virginal one.
No, she was not a virginal one. But
there's really only one of those, as I understand it.
Yes, only the one. Which is what a lot of this hangs on, the whole religious situation. But that is not today, so...
But I appreciate your candor.
Thank you. We get even more from her painting about what her appearance looked like. Her long neck and whitest of white skin. I don't know how you could get much whiter. We're talking...
translucent.
Yeah.
I want to know what her sunscreen regimen was.
Don't leave the castle. She had barely any eyebrows and an epilated hairline, which we talked about earlier. And Fouquet broke with tradition to paint Mary as a sensual and fashionable woman. Jesus seems totally uninterested in the very voluptuous breast that is right by his face, and Mary is not encouraging him to breastfeed or suckle. The portrait combines the pious character of Agnes with her sensuality, the uncovered breast, and her taste for good things with the ermine cloak. And the crown placed on her head goes with her nickname at the time, the Queen who is not the Queen, or the Queen without a crown. So I sent this to you. You have more of a training in art history, so I'm going to let you tell me a little bit more about this painting.
I mean, what I noticed right away is that it's blue. Her dress is made of a blue, very fashionable silk, but blue was the most expensive color for artists to use at the time. It was made of lapis lazuli, which had to come from the Far East.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't blue the most royal color in France at this point?
Definitely, yeah. And Mary is often represented in blue. The wealthy were often represented in blue, so it's kind of showing her status at court at the same time as showing her importance within this religious embodiment that she has. It's a very arresting image.
Mm-hmm.
She's looking down not at the baby, but at her bosom, which I find interesting. Her focus is not on the child.
That is fascinating. I didn't pick that up.
And the way that she is dressed is very voluptuous, highlights her waist, and it gives her quite a heavy hip as well to show
motherhood.
Fertility. I think it's a pretty clear image. I don't think Fouquet was trying to be subtle.
No, not in the least.
Also, again, so perky.
Yeah, and this is contemporary.
If you're in the car, please don't look at your phone. It looks like she has double D implants.
Also, there is a very clear...
with a cavernous divide.
Right.
Yes.
And I don't know what I would call that other than a valley between two mountains. And it is a pronounced valley.
And of course, a valley could refer to other parts of the body that are necessary for childbirth.
I guess that's true. I didn't think about it that way.
I'm here for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't have a good transition for that. Good for them.
Good for her.
Anyway, the role that Agnes Sorel began to play in the French court provoked a lot of anger from some of the men politicians.
They're jealous of the pillow talk. They can't do that.
You can't do it. A young woman with no political experience was advising on matters of state. And worse still, she flaunted her beauty and became known for her outrageous sense of fashion. What was there for these very serious counselors to actually like about her? Because they can't have her. Therefore, why do I appreciate it?
Obviously, they need to adopt her style and just let their...
Free the nipple?
I was going to say free the penis.
No. No one wants to see that, Caroline. No unsolicited dick pics here, please. Agnes had her clothes custom designed, and they included a dress that left, like in the painting, the left breast totally exposed.
I'm wondering if they were different sizes.
Oh, or what if she just had a favorite?
Different sizes. One just feels better.
Perkier.
Perhaps she had sensitive nipples and the fabric hurt. We just don't know, Erica.
It is not ours to
Ours
reason.
is not to reason why.
No, it is not. But the Archbishop of Reims really felt like it was his, and is said to have advised the king to put a stop to the wearing of clothing at court that had front openings through which one sees the, quote, teats, nipples, and breasts of women, unquote.
Sorry, what's the difference between a teeth and a nipple?
I think it's like the whole item, and
so while I totally think it is everyone's right to dress as they wish, I do see where the Archbishop is coming from, and that he's like, if we're gonna be doing this whole no sex out of marriage thing, having her walk around with this glorious double D implant like bosom is really not helping us.
I mean,
I'm not saying it's the right way to go. I'm just saying I see why he said it.
And honestly, do I want to scroll through my Instagram right now and see nanas? No, I don't. But also...
Do men? Yes, they do.
Yes, they do. We've talked a lot about her physical beauty, and her fashion, and her cultural impact. But let's talk a little bit more about the political. Monstrelet, the chronicler, a contemporary of Agnes, said, quote, Agnes was of a very charitable way of life and liberal in almsgiving, and of her possessions she distributed widely to the poor, to the churches, and to the beggars, unquote. So, yes, she was a mistress, but it is clear that she lived up to every standard of the medieval ideal of a woman.
And of a queen, specifically.
Yes.
If I was Marie, I would not be thrilled.
I would not want to live up to that.
Unless she really was not interested in Charles and thought,
maybe
great,
she was
doing
some other things on the side.
Well, it is France.
Well, we have on this one side of the coin Agnes, who is superseding all expectations. And then on the other side, we have Charles VII, who was, by all accounts, pretty useless. It was the latter part of the 100 Years' War, and in what Steenackers describes as one of the saddest periods of French history, just under 2/3 of France belonged to England and then to Burgundy. And as for the nation's finances, Steenackers wrote, quote, the King of France put them in a pawn shop, unquote. He was too busy satisfying his need for pleasure in month-long frenzies of gambling, drinking, and womanizing.
He is the poster boy for democratic rule.
Yeah. France largely belongs to England because Henry V went and took it. It is mine now.
Yeah, but then he died right before he could get it.
And then he died. So there was still this issue going on. And then you get Charles VII kind of rising up with the aid of Joan of Arc. So.
Oh, Joan of Arc.
Mm-hmm. Agnes has very much been linked as the... not joking, quote, spiritual successor of Joan of Arc where Charles VII is concerned. Which I find shocking, but okay.
Tell me how she was like Joan of Arc. I'm struggling.
Yeah, it is a hard parallel to see. It's not in the sense that she saw visions or rode into battle, but it was very much that she was a guiding presence for Charles, much like Joan of Arc was.
Because Joan of Arc basically just said, dude, we're doing this. Like,
yeah.
Because Charles was going to lay over and just let it happen.
And that's pretty much what Agnes did. So as soon as Agnes arrived on the scene, the king was a completely transformed man. Steenackers, again, quote, Charles VII, having already come to an age of 30, having understood neither his situation nor his duties, and having seemed destined for eternal mediocrity, this man pulls no punches.
And honestly, that does ring true. Yeah,
it does.
He was not ambitious, even to keep what he already had.
So he reveals himself out of the blue and as if by magic, unquote. Honest and able men, all friends of Agnes, took leading roles in Parliament, and in the space of 2 years, France was almost completely reconquered.
I'm sorry, so why were the advisors all PO'd that she had a seat at this table? I mean, that just doesn't make sense.
Just wait for it.
Boobs.
As the life of Joan of Arc was indivisibly linked with the destiny of Charles VII, so Agnes Sorel was also closely associated with the splendid period, although short, of his reign. Now, where Joan had, like, angels and God, Agnes had a little bit of a different approach. Mm-hmm. She told him that her astrologer, whose views were, I will say, very well respected at the time, had predicted that she would be at the side of a great king, which led him to think she would be at the side of the King of England, his rival. And so he said absolutely not. He determined then and there that he would confront his English adversaries to liberate Normandy, and so on and so on and so on.
That's a weird response to that.
Yeah.
He didn't see himself as the great king at whose side she would be.
I guess he really took into account that he was
Not a great king.
A mediocre asshole. To do this, he relied on the help of a certain Pierre de Breze, who pushed the army into using metal cannonballs to attack the English fortifications.
What were they using before?
I have no clue.
Rocks?
I guess?
It is the 1400s.
He had the total support of Agnes, both in his capacity as principal advisor to the king and in defense against accusations leveled by the Dauphin and the future Louis XI, which we'll kind of get back to in just a minute. In 1855, historian Henri Martin says, quote, Sorel urged the king to overcome his laziness. Charles finally became interested in his, quote, business and in applying his
job. Oh my God.
And in applying his common sense and practical spirit to listening to useful advice and accepting by hand, if not choosing, good instruments of government, unquote.
It took a woman with her left breast exposed to be like, don't be lazy, get off your ass and do something about your country that's being taken from you.
It's like the nude newscasters. Do you remember that?
Are you talking about the naked women who were giving the news?
Yes.
Yes. I do recall that there was a television station that decided to make people sit up and listen. Other things had to perk up and be present.
Apparently it works in the 1400s and in the age of technology. History is cyclical.
I would just say men are obvious.
100%.
Sex sells. That's the answer.
They are not complicated creatures.
We apologize to our 7 male listeners.
So, another person that she brought into the fold to help with France's finances was her friend Jacques Coeur. And he brought her fine fabrics and precious stones. And as we discussed, this probably included some of the first cut diamonds and cut sapphires. He was the merchant who was the first to establish trading links with countries in the Middle East, so Syria, Lebanon, etc.
Makes sense she was painted with lapis lazuli then.
Yeah, competing with merchants from Venice, Pisa, and Genoa. Products from other countries brought a revival of prestige to the court, and Jacques Coeur soon amassed a colossal fortune. He was then subsequently named Master of the Mint, and his good management meant that he gave the king the means to fight the English during the famous 100 Years' War.
And this was her friend that she brought into play.
Yeah, when war is happening and we look at these historical things, we often just think of the fighting that happens and not the luxury goods or the imports and exports that are the soft power behind, or even the financial power that makes military might function.
Right.
Alas, this was not going to last much longer for her. Sorel did die at just age 28 when she was pregnant with her fourth child. And with her went Charles's glory. Quote, all the weakness of his youth, Steenacker says, suddenly overflowed like a torrent which spilled its banks and spread out into scandals, unquote.
All right. Steenacker might be rude about the way he refers to the harem of deer, but that was excellent.
He's not pulling any punches.
And the sexual innuendo of the overflowing torrent spilling upon the banks is...
Yeah. He's giving everybody a hard time.
Poetry.
Yes.
La la la.
Heavily pregnant with her fourth child, she made her way to visit the king, who was on a military campaign, and the king unusually did not seem eager to see her. This was very unusual. Instead of coming to the war camp, he had her go to the abbey at Jumièges, where she went into labor, bearing the king another daughter. Agnes never recovered from her labor. She suffered severe abdominal pains and became extremely frail. She died on February the 9th of 1450. Officially, she died of dysentery, but there were contemporary accusations that the Dauphin had plotted to have her poisoned.
All right, I do see that. But I don't understand why the king wasn't happy to see her, just because he was on a military campaign and she was pregnant. This is not a great place.
There was really no explanation.
Maybe the Dauphin was poisoning his mind and her body.
Maybe. Throughout her life, Agnes and the Dauphin failed to see eye to eye on almost any issue. And to the Dauphin, she was an embarrassment, degraded his mother, and was to blame for France's problems. But, like...
Clearly not.
Clearly not!
Yeah, agreed.
I can understand why he would be pissed about the disrespect to his mom. Completely understandable.
Especially if she had been foisted upon his mother as part of her court.
Part of her household. Yeah.
But...
I get it, but she was not the cause of France's problems.
She was not the cause of France's problems. And anybody with a brain could have been like, Dad had very little going before, and now he's kind of doing better. Maybe we should encourage the one positive influence.
Maybe.
Instead of leaving him to just the basic ladies, the basic deer.
The basic no-name deer.
The no-name deer.
God, that's so terrible.
Steenacker.
Their relationship continued to sour following his failed revolt against his father and subsequent exile to the southwest of France. However, with Louis hundreds of miles away, there was little evidence to corroborate suggestions that he had arranged for Agnes to be poisoned. Until 2004!
Oh no! I do love that we are finding these bodies.
I love it!
Justice.
I love it!
Lay it on me.
So...
Pull her up.
God, Jesus, Caroline!
Honestly, Agnes seems like the type of woman that would appreciate that joke.
I think she would enjoy the joke. I think she would enjoy the justice even more.
Yeah, let's give it to her.
Agnes remains...
That's what he said.
Were exhumed. Scientific tests on her body discovered that she had an internal concentration of mercury between 10,000 and 100,000 times that which would typically be discovered
Because,
in
of course,
remains.
everybody that died at that time had mercury in their system. It was just a matter of how much.
Yeah, and it doesn't prove who killed her, but that amount of mercury is fatal. And it was not a topical mercury, which was in a lot of
Makeup.
cosmetics.
Yeah.
But when you're otherworldly beautiful, you don't really need cosmetics.
Well, how do you think she got that pale skin?
I mean,
Rub some mercury on it.
it was clear that this mercury had been ingested. Maybe this could have been a medication for some sort of worm that she had.
A worm?
Yeah, gross.
This poor woman.
Ringworms, maybe?
Poison to treat a ringworm? No, thank you.
But I think more than likely, it was either the mercury overdose or it was somebody who actually poisoned her. And it does seem like the Dauphin would have the most to gain. Now, it was used against Jacques Coeur to get him out of the way. They blamed him for it, but if
The wealthy merchant.
But he had nothing to gain from her dying. She was his meal ticket.
And neither did Charles the Seventh, unless he had tired of her and didn't know what to do, so
But
he
there's
poisoned
no
her.
historical indication of that.
But that feels odd.
The only indication that we get about his feelings about her death, and I think they're pretty bold, he kind of went back to being shitty.
A good woman by a man's side can do a lot, and losing that influence is devastating to their forward trajectory.
After her death, her royal lover, Charles VII, had an elegant and touching tomb built to hold the body of the deceased favorite in the choir of the Collegiate Church of St. Ours, where it remained for more than 3 centuries. The tomb was vandalized during the Revolution, and
Why
in
not?
1809, it was moved to a tower known as Fair Agnes's Tower, and later inside the royal castle. In 2005, after she was exhumed, it was finally returned to the Collegiate Church, where its recently restored stone effigy can be admired today.
It's actually very lovely, and it does
is.
show the stunning beauty of this woman and her very soft features, I think I would say.
And it is even more interesting that she's tied so closely with Joan of Arc because just a few meters away, a statue of Joan of Arc watches over her. Pretty significant seeing how she was such a guiding force with Charles, both Joan and Agnes.
So Joan of Arc died in 1431, so before Agnes was in the picture. So Agnes clearly had done her homework about Charles, and she understood that he responded to an innocent-esque woman, despite the boobs.
Mm-hmm.
She knew that you couldn't just let him wallow.
Right.
He had to be pushed into action.
Someone has to push.
I would say she definitely looked at Joan of Arc and what she managed to accomplish to provoke the same response from Charles.
So not only is Agnes lauded by Voltaire's poems, she's the subject of an 1838 opera named after her, 2 Russian operas from Tchaikovsky. She's also a featured figure on Judy Chicago's installation piece, The Dinner Party, being represented as one of the 999 names on the Heritage floor. 2 garments use Sorel's name in their descriptors, the Agnes Sorel bodice, the Agnes Sorel corsage, and a fashion style named after her as well, the Agnes Sorel style, which is described as a princess style of dressing. She has been muse to contemporary people to us now, like Yves Saint Laurent, Helmut Newton, Jean-Paul Gaultier, or even Alexander McQueen.
That's impressive.
And in 2015, she was the face of Free the Nipple on Instagram.
And that is the epitome of success. She made her mark, darn it.
Well, the question is, did she have a seat at the table?
For sure.
Yeah, I think there's no
Let's be
denying
real.
this.
She's at the head of the table. Charles is like 3 seats down, just staring at her boob while she talks.
She set the table.
She set the table.
And I think she continues, obviously, to have influence.
In a variety of ways.
Right.
Not only a fashion muse, which is very cool, but also to be used as this free the nipple, which regardless of
Your
what you feel
opinion.
about breastfeeding, it is important babies be fed. That was a big movement in 2015, and I had a baby right afterwards, so I recall it vividly. I think that's an important role for a woman that literally fought to free the nipple. She had archbishops telling her to put it away, and she was like, nope, it's working for me.
And
She did not hide her femininity.
Well, to be a woman at that time and to stand up to an archbishop and say no and still be a political power and to be portrayed as the Virgin Mary, a religious icon, not to mention the fact that she was still meeting and going beyond all of those ideals for medieval queenship, like almsgiving and being that intercessor between the people and the court and the king.
I just want to know where the queen was in all of this. Was she just out to lunch?
I know.
Did she despise her idiot husband? Which makes sense.
Fair.
Because the difference between official mistress and the queen is that the queen has the right to be there, but Agnes had to keep her place, whether that be with exposed bosoms, a seat at the table, wearing diamonds, making him happy in bed and out. You know, she had work to do.
And listen, the woman did it well.
And that, my friends, is that. I'm Caroline.
And I'm Erica, and we are pithily yours.
This episode is brought to you by the Pithy Chronicle, LLC. The Pithy Chronicle is intended for education, entertainment, and non-commercial purposes. Any views or opinions expressed in this podcast are personal and do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations that the owner may or may not be associated with in a professional or personal capacity. While we offer lots of sarcasm, this podcast does not offer any advice or services. Listening to this podcast may induce fits of laughter, unexpected distraction, or uncontrollable rage at the subjects, hopefully not at us. We hope you learned something today. If not, so sorry. Please be advised we are not experts in the following fields: medical, legal, financial, technological, thermonuclear engineering, submarine warfare, neuroscience, or cat husbandry. Thanks for listening to our little disclaimer. Just covering our history-loving asses. Bye!